From Heaven Blues Channel, we bring you Paranormal, Book 9, Part 5, Legend of the Pharaoh's Curse, by Dr. Ahmed Khalid Tawfiq. And please like and subscribe to Heaven Blues Channel to support this translation project. Chapter 3, The Friend. Yes, Western psychologists believe in biorhythm, and believe there are people created to fall into trouble caused by their stupidity. As for our friend Rifat Ismail, it's different. Trouble pursues him whether he commits stupid acts or not, and whether his biorhythm is at the peak or rock bottom. 7. The Mummy That Confused Us. Dr. Ramsey said, "I did not expect all this to happen, but it did." The nightmare started in the last days of December 1966. Some of our men found an original vase that must have dated back to the 6th dynasty, and this was in the city of Luxor on the east bank of the Nile. As you know, friends, the pharaohs used to bury their dead on the west side of the Nile, and they would describe the deceased in a polite inscription which read, "Gone westward." Therefore, I did not expect in the excavations to find an entrance to a tomb in this place, so far away from the famous Valley of the Kings. But that's what happened. And from the first moment, we realized that this burial site differs from everything we're accustomed to. The inscriptions at the entrance and the warning spells which read, "The one with deep-seated evil inside him will spread horror in the hearts of the intruders." And even the steps leading downward, and the engraved ceilings were all in an unfamiliar pattern, in addition to an abnormal number of depictions of the pharaoh's goddess of evil, Set. All of this carried a despicable, ominous nature. Without hesitation, all of our scientists agreed that they had never heard of this pharaoh, whom we will call here, for purposes of secrecy, Akhirum I, which is an unusual name for an Egyptian pharaoh, but is very close to his real name. We transported the mummy to a special storeroom within the Antiquities Authority, and on New Year's Eve, 5 of our best Egyptologists gathered to study and photograph the coffin, and then they opened it in the presence of a limited number of experts. Actually, we were overly hasty. We didn't stop for a second to question the secret of grave robbers avoiding looting this gravesite in particular. Did they know something we did not? Yes, I don't remember there being any footprints, but there were rushed and interrupted footprints in the dust, as if whoever went in hurried to escape for reasons we do not know. And I don't remember there being a corpse lying on its side with horrified features, as if it had seen the devil himself. But we interpreted this as we saw fit, and we said that the air devoid of humidity helped preserve this corpse for all these centuries. And I don't have to tell you that finding the thief's corpse undecayed after at least 2,000 years seemed so thrilling and astonishing to us. And so, friends, we opened the coffin. And carefully our scientists removed the golden inscriptions and did not fail to notice that strange and horrific warning that constantly haunted them. We began to conclude that this pharaoh was outcast by the priest for some reason or another, or perhaps he found his only chance to take revenge on him after his death. And we also realized that he was practicing black magic on a wide scale, and there is a distinct possibility that he protected his own tomb himself. The important thing is that our experts wrote a full report on the status of the coffin and their best guess on this pharaoh's placement in ancient Egyptian history, and included a number of photographs in their file. We were just about to remove the layers of wrappings to examine the mummy itself when the deaths happened quickly, like a colony of flies sprayed with a strong pesticide, or a fish tank polluted by a bottle of kerosene, or any other analogy as you like. The deaths of 5 scientists within 1 week. No way this is a coincidence. The Interior Ministry assigned a high-level delegation of top experts in criminal investigation, headed by General Murad Sharif, to investigate these deaths. The consensus was that this was a conspiracy by a foreign country with the goal of terrorizing or preventing our scientists from speaking. At that time, the memory of the Israeli rockets sent to assassinate the German rocket scientists was fresh in our minds. Author's note: this happened as well during the development of the Cairo and Zafir rockets by the Egyptian scientists being aided by Israel. Despite that, they failed to gather all the threads of the story, and no one dared to utter the words Pharaoh curse, but we were pretty sure that was the only explanation. During a visit to his office, I asked General Murad, "Did you find any leads?" He smiled in exhaustion and said, "What do you want? When a man dies in a room with door and windows locked from the inside, without proof he committed suicide, at that point it's out of our hands." "You mean—" I started. "I only mean what I said." He then opened a file in front of him and, putting on his glasses, said, "Here's the coroner's report. As you can see, no evidence of violence, no wounds, no bruising, only an expression of terror on his face, and—" "And what?" Smiling cruelly, he stared at me from over his glasses and said, "No trace of blood in their veins." "And no coagulation?" "Not a single clot. I personally think that this matter more likely involves a vampire rather than a normal criminal." I felt goosebumps invading the pores of my skin. Seemingly one thing connects the 5 victims, and that means we did not just find the grave of any unknown pharaoh, but it was... I sat in my home thinking distractedly about what I should do. I can't refuse to continue because it's my job, nor can I go further in this huge danger because it's my life at stake. The meaning of what's happening here is that whoever deals with this mummy inches toward a catastrophe. But I don't have the clearance to obstruct further scientific research, nor do I have the authority to return the mummy to its tomb and lock it. Grabbing a stack of English magazines, I thumbed through them to pass the time while my wife finished preparing dinner. She, by the way, teaches pathology in the medical school of the University of... "Have you seen this magazine? Check out page 10. She said this as she placed the spoons on the plates, a victorious smile on her lips. I grabbed the magazine she mentioned and flipped to page 10, which showed a large color photo of 2 men, one blond and the other darker, bald and smiling dumbly, and captioning the picture in large red font, "An Egyptian and an American vanquish zombie." Enthusiastically, my wife said, "His name is Rifat Ismail, a colleague at my university." "And what's his specialty?" "Hematology," she answered. With interest, I started reading the article, which spoke of 2 adventurers who faced the legend of the zombies in Jamaica, proving it was just a myth, and managed to destroy the overseer of a leper colony who was abusing his patients. As for the American, he is a computer engineer, and as for the Egyptian, who is a doctor, he claimed to have found Dracula's mummy and seen Scotland's legendary Loch Ness monster. Warily, I asked my wife, "So, is he a nutcase?" "Maybe," she said, "but he's honest and sincere and really fairly intelligent." "And did he really live these experiences?" "So they say." "And who says that?" "He does." Contemplating his features, I felt that, maybe, I wouldn't be totally wrong in trusting him. And who knows, maybe he's smarter than he looks. After all, he is a doctor of hematology, and could prove or refute the findings of a disease in the blood of the 5 scientists. And he has experience in the paranormal world, and I'm pretty sure he could tell us something about our dilemma here. Fate seems to have organized my seeing his photo, and I won't lose this opportunity. "Do you have his phone number?" "We have his address." "Then he's our man." And with that, General Murad sent one of his cars to bring this ghost hunter guy to us, and with it an official summons, which we wrote in a bleak way, asking him for his expert opinion. And my initial impression of him was that he was polite and rather classy, except that he was nervous and sensitive almost to the point of being ill. And he was smoking like the smokestack on a train, and I can't stand smokers. Courteously, I began explaining to him what this was all about, but he was perceptive. With Rifat Ismail, you always feel that life is like a soccer match seen many times, or a joke heard before, and he doesn't have the patience or courtesy to wait until you finish the joke. Instead, he screams in your face that he has heard it before you even open your mouth, and he always gives the impression that you can never shock him. Anyway, I introduced him to our old respected colleague in Egyptology, Mr. Mohammed Ragab, who began giving him a more detailed background on the situation. And this colleague tried to hide from Dr. Rifat the truth about the 5 bloodless corpses, but I insisted on revealing all the cards so as to let him know what awaited him. And when General Murad started explaining to him what the police knew about this incident, it seemed clear to us that he focused his thoughts on the Pharaoh curse, that curse which we realized from some of his words and his clear tension that he knew a lot about. Then came the main question. Are you going to autopsy the mummy? He seemed to be thinking, but I knew he would accept, as Dr. Rifat is the type of person who does not know how to say no. And also, his wish to appear civilized and unafraid of myths is enough to bring him disasters. And on January 21st, Dr. Rifat Ismail was preparing to inspect the mummy, and we could find no one to assist him except Mr. Mohammed Ragab, who tried to act brave and reasonable. And with them was a young photographer who agreed to video the autopsy with a 16mm video camera under the spotlights. And none of them expected that the gates of hell would open, and we would not be able to close them. 8. The horror returns. Rifat wore a ridiculous-looking outfit, but it was effective, and he placed a gas mask over his nose and gloves on his hand. Then he used a vacuum device and a Geiger counter to check for any radioactivity that may be present. Truth be said, he was careful, but I believed that the logical, material explanation for these events was not applicable. It was like a trial for preventing the evil eye by using an X-ray filter. He tried to eliminate all other possibilities so that if something bad happened to him the next day, it would be obvious to us that the Pharaoh curse was the reason, which is a true scientific method in experiments, based on fixing all elements except the one being tested. This man has a very organized brain, but I don't like him much, and that is my fault, not his. After a few minutes of tense waiting, we heard the sound of a body falling in the autopsy room, and we had no real explanation. It's just that we forgot to be careful and barged into the room to find Mohammed Ragab lying on the floor, while Dr. Rifat, that nutcase, continued carelessly putting the samples into his bag. He even seemed annoyed by the whole situation and said it was simply that Mohammed Ragab was hypersensitive. And he left the room, and we did the same. And in my office, Dr. Rifat came and told me, while sipping his coffee, that the mummy had no internal organs. Isn't that strange? A mummy from the 6th dynasty without guts? And we had no Kanubi vessels within the gravesite, which was unexplainable. This question ran within the corridors of my mind, but Dr. Rifat, who is not an Egyptologist, placed little importance on the topic and treated it sardonically. I placed a phone call to Dr. Shakir in the Ministry of Health Labs, instructing him to await the samples we sent to him, to check them meticulously, and to perform a long list of procedures and research as requested by Dr. Rifat. And the latter smoked heavily, unmoved by the autopsy he had performed only minutes before. Thus I tried to warn him, speaking to him about the horrible black nights awaiting him and how death would have been easier. But it had little effect, and he left as he had to go meet his fiancée. What kind of psychology does he have when he starts his day provoking a pharaoh demon and ends it in a romantic setting with his fiancée? He is either very brave or very stupid. I went home and watched television with my wife. I stared blankly at the TV while flipping pages in some book on Egyptology, hoping to find something that could shed some light, even just a little bit of light, on the situation. The pharaoh's passion for laxatives is so strange, as is their habit of using animals, which they learned from the Abu Mihjan bird, who practices this procedure regularly using its beak. They reportedly believed that all sources of evil, spirits, and diseases were the guts, and believed that the removal of the feces was purifying, and the one with deep-seated evil inside him. This horrible sentence we found in the tomb was not a metaphor, but was actually the truth. Therefore, they removed this pharaoh's guts from his body, because they presumed the evil that moved him in this life was contained in his guts. That's why we had found no Kanubi vessels within the grave, as they had buried them far in the desert, or burned them, or threw them to the crocodiles. They hated this pharaoh, but did not dare to get rid of his body. Therefore, they buried him respectfully in the manner of his ancestors. They just covered the only thing that protected them from his evil, and I dare say that they were wrong, for this cautionary measure did not prevent him from killing the thief and the 5 scientists. The pharaohs were keen on protecting their dead, but preferred methods other than the heinous ones this evil pharaoh used. I was absorbed with some of these notions when the phone rang, so my wife rose to answer it, and then came back carrying some of my clothes to brush them down, and said while sitting, "The phone is for you. They want you." I rose to answer, expecting some kind of disaster, but it was the voice of one of my assistants with the good news of a recent development. "We found the Kanubi vessels, and they're coming now from Luxor." "Whose vessels?" "Ahiram's, of course." I felt the hair standing up on my arms and ice running down my spine. "What? How?" He said, "In a very small gravesite next to the original, containing 2 vessels with many inscriptions and depictions of Set, the goddess of evil, and endless warnings and curses on our heads." "And did you open the 2 vessels?" "We're not much into such things." I told him, "Then don't open them. It's forbidden. And ensure that they are safe and remain intact." "You got it," he said. "But why?" "It's a long story. Just do as I say." I then hung up and returned to my wife, asking her to prepare my clothes for going out, as I had decided to go immediately to see these 2 vessels. While cleaning my suit jacket, picking up something between her forefinger and thumb, she said, "Here's the proof that you have a second wife hiding behind my back." "Really?" "Yes," she said, "and apparently she works in a sugar factory." And she placed in my hand a small crystal like some kind of snowflake which had been stuck to the fabric of my woolen suit. And there were a lot of them. Of course, I don't remember where and how these particles got stuck to me, but it definitely didn't happen in a sugar factory. "Fine," I said, "and now please prep my clothes as I'm going to meet my 3rd wife, who works in a leather factory." She helped me get dressed and tied my tie, and asked me not to be late. "Why?" I asked her. She smiled, enjoying how I had taken the bait, and said cruelly, "Because tonight is our anniversary." End of part 5. Hope you enjoyed this story. This is the last segment before the final segment. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for the upcoming content.